And now it's time for Impact Corner with Dr. G and Miss Thang.
Good morning, Dr. G.
Well, good morning, Ms. Stephanie. Good morning to my listening audience. I do apologize for that little bleep. That was a bleep on the blunder. But we're rearing and ready to go this morning and to the listening audience right across to Wales. I picked up some folks over in that area, so we say good morning to you as well. So I'm finding out that I'm being able to pull together pieces of or articles or pieces of history that helps to lend to the discussion or the inspiration this morning. And so this particular article is a very, very old article. To some will be familiar. To some may be like, I have no idea what she's talking about. But if you just listen to me, I promise you I'll tie it in. So the article, as I said, is very, very old, and it starts to read as thus. This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created, when the Lord God made the heavens and the earth. Now no shrub had yet appeared on the earth, and no plant had yet sprung up. For the Lord God had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no one to work the ground. But streams came up from the earth and watered the whole surface of the ground. Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. And the Lord God commanded the man, you are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For when you eat from it, you will certainly die. The Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. But for Adam, no suitable helper was found. So the Lord God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep. And while he was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs and then closed up this place with flesh. Then the Lord God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to the man. The man said, this is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of men. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. So for focal this morning, we can look at maybe a controversial subject. Hashtag, she leads in submission. I'm going to say it again. Hashtag, she leads in submission. So this weekend, one of my young people came over to visit. She's now living in Wales with her husband and doing some phenomenal things. But she challenged me and a few of her questions, and I'm paraphrasing. She says, Aunt George, you should do a talk show on how we as women should lift up our men instead of putting them down. We've become a feministic society, and we've pushed our men like they are less important. We often articulate what we can do without them. We have crushed our men. We've devalued them. Now, that did give rise to some attention and thought. And then she shared a scenario of a friend of hers who outside the home is a strong feminist and does all things to reflect her position, and who she will also encourage other women to take her lead, which doesn't promote any means of submission or respect even to their male counterparts. Yet at home, she displays a completely different behavior. Let's say it's non-feministic. Which brings me to the thought for today. Hashtag, she leads in submission. And also to declare an apology to our men in community. The historical event I read to you spoke of the first recorded surgery where a rib was taken from Adam and created a helpmate for him by way of a woman, who we now know as Eve. The posture of this morning's inspiration is that we have been created from the rib of man, not from his foot, not from his hand, or not from his head. We have been created as a source for a dualistic purpose to oversee what has been known to us, and we do that together. This message is not a declaration that our voice cannot be spoken or heard. The question becomes, as women, how are we speaking, and what measures are we taking to be heard? It really makes a difference. You see, as a woman, our voice is a very strong instrument that shapes, nurtures, formulates personality, confidence, accountability, and even the direction of those we have spoken over. Yet we have become like the woman in the illustration. Not all, but many, and I am included, hence the discussion. We speak all sorts of language outside of the home. Yet when we are back in the comfort of our homes, we speak differently yet again. And single women, I'll come back to you. How then do we speak with a forked tongue, yet expect the environment around us to remain calibrated for growth and healing? To the many women who live alone, but having to speak in authority and not with authority, we also find ourselves resting outside of the comfort of our homes, outside the safety that our homes are supposed to provide. Why the term outside safety? Because we are the voice that spurs all things that create life. Yet our current communities reflect all things anti-life. And by no way am I purporting that everything negative going on in our communities is our fault. But if we are the nurturers of life, and we choose to speak a double language, are we confusing the atmosphere? We can easily articulate what our men do, but in the same breath and outside the home, we chide with those who speak a negative message. So let's jump into the position of submission. Now, submission defined by the dictionary is an act or instance of submitting, yielding control to a more powerful or authoritative entity. The act or condition of submitting something for consideration, approval, treatment, or action. An agreement between parties involved in a dispute to abide by the decision of an arbitrator or arbitrators. Oftentimes, we misconstrue and try to live by the first definition, yielding control to a more powerful or authoritative entity. Yet we were created from Adam's rib. There's no yielding or more powerful authority there because we came from his side. And I'm going to interject something. Let me do it a little later. Submission pardons us as women to align to a thought or action of our male counterparts. It's an alignment to an action or behavior. And to our men, it is very easy for your woman to align when you demonstrate integrity and fortitude. And we would be willing to align with and follow when there's a mean of support and protection. Now I'm going to interject it here. I keep hearing my life story coming into this picture. I remember, Ms. Stephanie, when I exchanged vows with my late husband. Some of my closest friends already know this. When you go to your rehearsal, the minister says, well, we're going to talk about obeying and all that stuff. And I'm thinking, I think so. And so at the altar, I had already told Reverend Dyson, don't put the obey line in there. Just don't do it. Well, of course. What do you think? He's the minister. He says, and Georgette, will you love and obey Brian? I looked at him like, have you lost your mind? I told him, I said, I'll love him. I ain't obeying him, and then, of course, my husband, he's supposed to say all his worldly goods in thee I doth share. And he cracked up and he says, my worldly goods, you're right. So, it was almost like a comedy show.
Right.
and why I raise this is because, you see, it's very difficult to follow when you don't understand, or maybe the trust level is not there yet.
Right. Yeah.
And so to obey somebody, I'm thinking, I'm too independent to be talking about obeying. I obey God, but I ain't obeying my husband.
Exactly. Yep.
And I'm saying this out loud because you see, for those of us who are believers, how do you follow someone you haven't seen and you can't follow the person that's been placed before you? Let that ponder for a little bit. And so that was a lesson I learned over the 28 years of marriage. But let me go back to my narrative. Because where we are going in life, we may not have the answers, but as men, when you have demonstrated support and protection, and we are able to collaborate together, as women, I am able to follow you and submit to your leadership. Why? Because you seek the good for your family, and in particular, your helpmate. Now, I hear some fellas say, well, that's why I work in 24 jobs, to try to put food on the table.
Right.
And I get it. But if you don't have the conversation with your significant other, it can appear, yes, my husband did some phenomenal things, and he worked hard, many jobs. But because we had the conversation, it made it a little bit easier. But then when he passed, I would have rather have had him than him working the extra job. Because we could have worked it together because I was his helpmate. Now, let's go back to the same story. It says that this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of men. There's an honor bestowed upon the woman, for the man has acknowledged she is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. So, fellas, would you intentionally do harm to yourself? You see, when there's disrespect, harm, or other infused upon your woman, then you are really and truly harming yourself. Listen, man, at the end of the day, because we, the woman in your life, the nurturers, we are nurturers of life. So when the nurturer is hurt, and when she speaks hurt, and no healing can occur. Lastly, the story says, that is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. You see, there's an innate value to relationships that are sealed by marriage. They become one flesh. To those who are not married and involved in relationships, and you're seeking connection, and the union you crave doesn't occur until you become one flesh. And that's what marriage offers. So to all the hashtag she leads, let us be mindful in how we perform. Our language must propel a rhythm that promotes harmony. It is much easier to speak fluently with a forked tongue because we say one thing at home and something contrary when we are out of the home. And depending on the company we are with, but let us recognize that our words are most powerful, and we should always aim to speak life. And yes, we started this journey about talking about our communities and how they are seemingly dysfunctional. We have the power to speak life. So let's make that choice today. And yes, regardless of how our situation is and how hard and difficult it may be, you will eventually see how beneficial it will be to you to speak life and not death. At some point, the he who hurt you will require healing, and we may be called to extend it. I remember I was in a relationship, my first husband, he just always, he just pushed the wrong buttons, and there was discord, strong discord. But you know what? After a while, he needed healing. And so as much as we had that conflict, I had to turn around and extend it to him. So remember, we lead with strength, heart, and excellence. That's in and out of season because of who we are and how we must lead. Today we extend apologies to all men for any disrespect we have knowingly or unknowingly extended to you. And in the same breath, to all men, this apology will not overlook your lack of desire to improve you whatever that means to your significant other. Don't expect to receive when you're not willing, ready, and able to give. After a while, when we continue to give, we women continue to give without reciprocation, it gets old real fast, and we get tired, and then we stop giving. God called you men and placed you in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. Therefore, step up and work your field. We are here to be your helpmeet, but neither a footstool or disposal. The same story says that God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man and brought her to the man. We were brought to you. We didn't fight or say we wouldn't meet you and be a support to you. We love, and when we do it hard and with a desire to be loved in a similar way. It is easy for us to hashtag lead in submission when we are met halfway. For those not in a relationship or in marriage, we must also lead in submission. For it is here that our voices are at its loudest. Today we are learning to lead in submission. Gentlemen, we are learning to lead. When many of us have been forced to sit at the helm, it is most challenging to relinquish that position. So men, remember who we are to you as we learn to hashtag she leads in submission. Remember, you are the composer with a pen. Begin transcribing your destiny. And today's nugget for newness. In crisis, we must learn to lead in authority and not necessarily with authority. Leading in authority is never flaunty or puffed up. So remember, everyone, remember, we now lead in submission. And so that means that we're going to lead in authority and not with authority. So that's it for me. Follow me on my social media, Facebook at Govern International, Twitter at Govern INTL, email me at info@governinternational.org, or LinkedIn, Georgette Klein-Godwin. So be intentional today, ladies. Remember, we lead in submission. No, we're not a doorstep or footstool or a trash can. But how we lead, remember we speak life. Speak it in your home and outside of your home, and watch our communities begin to heal.
Oh, yes. Yes, thank you, Dr. G, so much for that impactful show this morning. And I feel like, lifting our man up is very important, and even healing ourselves is very important, so thank you for that.
You're most welcome. And again, if you struggle with that, you can reach out to me you can email me, Facebook me, and I'll be happy to, as a life coach, to help you with some nuggets. Again, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but I've lived it. And I'm just letting you know how we can, kind of start to heal our community. So again, I'm available.
And thank you for being available, because it's important, especially, and like you said, I'm glad you shared your story, because that word trust is very powerful, and gaining trust of your spouse, it's not easy. It's a little bit of work that sometimes has to happen, but we have to be patient with each other, and we have to see each other through the eyes where you look at me, you see yourself. And if you see yourself, then you can, love me like you love yourself. And then we can have patience for each other. So, yeah, I think it's very important.
I'm going to leave just one last nugget, just this one last thing, and I get off the air. And that is, I get it. Sometimes we go in the relationship, I put in 100, he puts in 60. And then next week he puts in 100, and then I put in 60. And so we're never on the same page. We're always unequally yoked. Okay? And so even though you're putting in 100, to work a relationship, I just said it, you have to work it. And you can't put in 100 and like, well, he didn't put in 100 this week. I'm going to go back to my 20%.
Right.
It's a constant. You have to stay, what's the cricketer says? Stick to the wickets and the runs come. Now, some cricketers are going to laugh at me or something. I know it's something like that, but, you got to stick at it. And eventually the runs will come. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's my little nugget again.
Yeah, but that's a good one, too. You keep dropping those diamonds on their heads this morning.
Anyway, ladies and gents, all the best. Be intentional today. Remember, you're the composer with a pen. begin transcribing your destiny.
Yes.
All right? We'll talk to you next week.
All right. Have a good one, Dr. G.
Thank you.
Okay,
bye-bye for now.